So, Chris, the Nintendo Online library that we've been talking about this year is massive. It is huge. But I thought it would be fun to talk about some of the titles that aren't on there that you'd really like to see added to the library. Even just wishful thinking. There's probably a lot of reasons, that some of these
Hmm.
games haven't made it on there. But what's on your wish list of games that you wish were on the online library?
I have at the top probably the original Smash Brothers, and that was for Nintendo 64. I've
Mhm.
I've wondered why they didn't just put it on automatically, but I do wonder if there's some kind of weird licensing thing that's going
Yeah,
on.
some characters could be
Hmm.
complicated.
Yeah, that like they have rights to certain games with those characters in them, but not all of them. Or yeah, or even the I think uh it was with another company as well that they made it together kind of thing, and so I wonder if there's something with that. I don't know, but they didn't put it on as one of the main kind of original N64 games. So Smash Brothers, a very odd one that I found on a list that we were both looking at is Mega Man and Bass, which I think we played
We
in
had an
some form
import
before.
copy of that
Yeah.
because it was the Famicom kind of rounded
Hmm.
cartridge. I don't
Yeah.
know why it worked, but it did
But
on our
I
Super
I did
Nintendo.
yeah, I found out it got released for Game Boy Advance at one point. So,
Oh,
you
so
know.
a couple opportunities to bring that one over, and of course,
Oh yeah.
the Mega Man X titles would also be awesome. They
Yes.
do have the classic Mega Mans. I think like 1 through 6 or something were recently added from the Nintendo era, but the Super Nintendo Mega Mans would be a lot of fun. I think Mega Man Legends was also on N64 as well as PlayStation.
Oh, was
That
it?
that one's probably a little complicated to bring over with the multi-platform nature of it, but there's a lot of Mega Man opportunities other than Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine to bring
Oh
into
yeah.
the Switch library.
Yeah.
Any others?
I and then the Pokemon games, like all the regular like Pokemon colors and gem
Red, blue,
names and stuff
green,
like that.
silver, diamond,
Red,
ruby,
yellow, blue.
sapphire,
Yeah.
pink, fuchsia. There probably was a fuchsia. Wasn't there a fuchsia? I don't know.
Probably. I There might as well be, I guess. Yeah. So those,
Those would be fun.
yeah.
It's like I get it. Pokemon is so big that like why would you put it up for free on an online library that you're just getting a subscription, especially when they probably have to pay licensing to Pokemon Company and things like
Hmm.
that. There are a lot of Pokemon titles, but no
Yeah.
mainline titles, not even Red
No.
Blue.
No.
Um, which like I both get it and wish it weren't that way.
Well, and they kind of remade Red and Blue for the Nintendo Switch as like one of the launch titles. What did they call it? Eevee and Pikachu, or Pokemon. What was it? Let's
Let's Go
Go.
Pikachu and Let's Go
Yeah,
Eevee.
that was it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
so they're
have.
already
Gosh, which
kind
one
of
did they? Let's
ported
Go
to the
Eevee.
Switch.
Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, I'm not saying that that's a an excuse or anything. I'm pointing out that might be one of the reasons why they haven't done that quite yet.
Right.
But
We could
I
sell
don't
this
know.
separately for more money.
Yeah.
Anything else before I start my wish list?
Not for me. Yeah, those are the main ones.
So, another game that is definitely not going to happen, but I really wish it would, for similar reason to the Pokemon titles, would be the Final Fantasy titles.
Hmm.
1 through 6 were on Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and all of those would be, any of those would be great. And also, they sell them separately. I know they just did the Pixel remaster, in the last couple of years of all those titles where it's classic but kind of updated a little bit. And then, of course, there's the 3D remakes from the DS era and things like that. Why give them away for free when we can sell them again? I get it. I wish they were there still. Even if it was just like Final Fantasy 1 and 2 or something. I think that is an important
Yeah.
part of Nintendo's history
Yeah.
that is missing. Similarly, while we're on the topic of RPGs, some games that I think they could probably get if they really if they tried at all, would be some of the more niche RPGs like Lufia and Secret of Evermore. Games that I
Hmm.
only ever rented from Blockbuster. I never actually played the entirety of, but I had fun. I'd like to explore those again. And that of course leads to yet more Square titles that they're just reselling rather than giving away on online
Yep.
libraries like Secret of Mana, and of course, this is Two Brothers Play a Game, so we have to mention Chrono Trigger every 5 minutes, I
Hmm.
believe, is what is our requirement by law. So all of those would be great. All Nintendo titles that are absolutely beloved. A few that actually might happen someday would be like Advance Wars on Game Boy Advance and other consoles
See that
since.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like a realistic one that would actually add a lot of value to the
Yeah.
online library of, you're moving units around almost like a war game, like a tabletop war game. Each unit has different stats, and you have to really plan it through. It's really a clever game that has gotten some remakes and iterations since,
I was gonna
but
say I thought there
would be
was
welcome.
one that came out pretty recently.
Yeah, I don't follow the series well enough to know much about that. I think there have been remakes of the original Advance Wars on Switch, um, but I take the classic Game Boy Advance port without any bells or whistles. And then I think the one that you and I will agree on most and probably can't happen because Disney is involved would be The Magical Quest starring Mickey
Yes.
Mouse, where Mickey Mouse
Yeah.
was platforming around and had costumes
Hmm.
he would turn into, like a magician and a firefighter and more that I can't remember. And that was a game that took me a long time to get the hang of, but once I did, I really fell in love with,
Yes.
and was part of a long line of actually good Disney
Hmm.
movie tie-ins like the Aladdin and Lion King games that were fun, had good music, and like
Yeah. Good
felt like
era.
what a movie tie-in game should be.
Hmm.
Uh, the Magical Quest was not a movie, but kind of had the same building blocks as the other Disney platformers from that area, from that era.
There's there's actually something in our our last episode, and I didn't say it during that time, but I was remembering that game, and there's something that triggered it, and so I mean that's how much I think it's in our minds. The Magical Quest game. It's a weird niche classic because
Hmm.
I think that there's a lot of people that didn't play it, but there's enough people that played it that would be like, yeah, that was great. So
I think
yeah.
it definitely hit cult classic
Yes.
status, but
Yeah.
maybe not full classic status.
Yeah. But it paved the way to a
Well,
lot. So yeah. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Then they will rate that game.
welcome to Two Brothers Play a Game. I'm Josh,
I'm Chris.
and this is a podcast where we, two brothers, play a game we found on sale for Nintendo Switch. Except that for at least a couple more months, we will be playing games from the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass library, classic games. We discuss some of, well, typically, though not in this case, we discuss smaller titles we individually checked in the first half of the podcast, and then the back half we discuss and review the game or games of the month that we both played. This month, that is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for N64. More and more of this introduction is becoming untrue as we as we continue through because for our opening segment we're actually both talking about the Nintendo Music app, which is
Mm-hmm.
one of the most like uh current things that we have ever talked about on this show. It only came out 2 weeks ago as of recording, and we are already talking about it instead of waiting 3 years for a 50% off sale and then talking about it after everyone has played it and moved on.
But it is connected because you
Uh,
can only go through it with a Nintendo Switch subscription.
Yes, any of the online Switch memberships get you free access to the Nintendo Music app. You just use your same login. And this is an app that you get on your phone. I don't know if there's any computer or Switch apps of it, but also it it makes the most
It's
sense to
better.
use on your
Yeah.
phone.
Oh yeah.
So you don't need the $50 a year expansion pass.
Mm-mm.
You can just do the regular $20 a year or the month to month subscriptions and get access to this. And yeah, released on October 30th, 2024. I was pretty excited about this,
Mm-hmm.
but it is still very young. It is still very small.
Mm-hmm.
It launched with about 65 hours of classic Nintendo music. A
Hmm.
sizable amount, not a bad start,
Yeah.
but by no means exhaustive by any measure.
No.
In the last 2 weeks, they have already added three new soundtracks. Wii
I just noticed. I
Sports,
was looking at it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Wii
Wii Sports.
Sports,
I saw it just pop up. Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and Donkey Kong Country 2, which puts the total at 26 soundtracks that are uh, included.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, a NintendoLife.com article I saw says that Super Mario 64, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and F-Zero
Hmm.
X are confirmed to be coming soon.
Okay.
So they're adding at a good pace. I mean, three
Yeah.
soundtracks in 2 weeks, that could add up to, like, if they kept that up, which they probably won't, but if they did, that would be like 70 new soundtracks a year. Even if they hit 50 soundtracks a year, I think they would have a pretty impressive library within a year or two.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little
What do you?
surprised that it's taken this long. Like I thought that they would launch with tons of soundtracks because you think about all the games, like even the ones that we keep talking about. There's a huge library, and they've released some of them on CD. Like I have still a CD of it was both. It was Nintendo Power exclusive. I was able to order through Nintendo Power. If anyone remembers that magazine, besides
Call the
us,
number on the back of the magazine.
but there was a Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64 together in a soundtrack, and
And we have
so I
Star Fox too. I'm
maybe I don't
remembering
know
this
why I
as you're
didn't listen
talking
to it
about
as
it.
much. I thought there were
Yeah.
three CDs with it, but I was trying to think if it was just divided into three CDs or what. But I think you might be right that I had the Star Fox one. I may need to find those again and download them to my computer. I have them somewhere. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, like those exist, and we do have Star Fox on the music app. But like you said, like Mario 64 is not coming out for a few more days or so, which
Yeah.
is odd. So I don't know why, but I think I have an idea why, but I don't know if I want to say it or save it if we get to like if we want to review it a little bit or not. But
Yeah, go ahead. I kind of gave the spiel on what this is. What are your feelings about it so far, after having tried it out in this early stage?
yeah, I when I saw the announcement, I was extremely excited. Like I said, I mean, I have access to some soundtracks, and also in the way of growing up, you could if you figured out how and you had a tape recorder, you could hook up your Nintendos and Super Nintendos and everything to record onto a tape recorder, and I would do that. I actually like recorded them onto cassette tape because I liked them so much, and then was able to figure out how to get them on my computers and just several ways. So like a long history of just like, yeah, please give me any of the Nintendo soundtracks. They're all great. And so once I saw this app, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing for them to release their library in some way. Like even if it's through the subscription, that's a great feature for
Mhm.
Nintendo Online. So I was excited. My review portion of it is I was surprised at the quality of the sound. I've
Mhm.
listened to it through earbuds and also through just my phone, and it has a very good clarity where I don't know. It just audio wise, it's a really good port of the soundtracks. Like especially for some of the older games, like the Star Fox 64 one, surprised me at the quality of that sound. So that was well done. again,
Yeah, I was
surprisingly.
curious what you were gonna say about that, 'cause, of these 2 brothers, you definitely have the better ear for music, and, it sounded fine to me, but I am easy to please when it comes to, transfer quality and things like that.
Yeah.
I also found it very good.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
because as we play the game, these games, I don't feel like the sound always is ported well within the game, which is very
mm,
interesting. And
mhm,
so I mean, we've gone through some of the, well, like I haven't listened to the Ocarina of Time soundtrack yet in the app, but when we were playing through it, it wasn't that great a quality to me. And but I'm greatly wondering how it will be in this music app because again, I think they did something to really polish everything that
mhm.
makes it even better. So yeah.
Yeah, I think my overall feelings are this is a strong opening, but if this is all it ever amounted to, they toss on one new album a month and it just kind of putters along for the next few years as a free add-on to online memberships, and I'll be like, it's free, that's cool.
Yeah.
Uh, Instantly having access to a couple of my favorite soundtracks that are on here are, of course, the Animal Crossing New Horizons
Hmm.
soundtrack, the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe soundtrack, both just, killer start to finish. And for nostalgia purposes, the Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island soundtrack
I listened to that
um,
one. Yeah.
are all ones I'm like, okay, I just have that in my pocket now. Awesome.
Yeah.
Not complaining at all. I think this thing could be truly impressive, but it does need a little more investing into it.
Hmm.
One album that I was like instantly looking for before I realized how kind of limited it is in terms of how many games are on here so far is the Xenoblade Chronicles
Mm.
albums. There's 4 games in that, and they have fantastic. These are action RPGs from the Wii through the Switch era, and the area music as just wandering from city to city fighting monsters is truly beautiful, and they are not yet available, though I do think they will be eventually due to the popularity of these games and soundtracks and the fact that Nintendo acquired the company that made these games,
Oh,
so it
I
can
was going to ask
probably
about
get
that.
the
Okay.
licensing agreement going okay.
Okay.
Uh, I hope. I don't know. Yeah, that's a little beyond
It
my
might be.
knowledge scope of how that works with music
Yeah.
licensing agreements. I imagine that is kind of the hold up on a lot of these is
Hmm.
we need to not only get the tracks into a comfortable listening level and sorted so that they fit into our playlists and whatnot, but we also need to dot all our I's and cross all our T's in our legal, the Nintendo legal team needs to do.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
enough that I know from a lot of people who are in industries like this that yeah, unfortunately there's reasons that licensing can't be that automatic, and it has to do with royalties and like whatever contracts have been negotiated already, like, and especially even though Nintendo acquired a company, it doesn't mean they have absolute full reign and access over that library. And so
right.
I could see them doing that, but yeah, it's like this weird thing of like, okay, this is a thing that wasn't in the contract, where does it fit, because it's online, it's an extra service, like, we need to make sure that we are on the up and up with whoever made the soundtracks and stuff like that. And that takes time because you got to contact whoever and negotiate and etc. And then take it all and make it, spiffy, the soundtrack spiffy like all the others. So we'll see. I could see it happening, but oh yeah, it's an unfortunately a big mess when it comes to licensing. It's why I know I'm going on and on about this. As a big Disney fan, especially for like someone that claims to collect the Disney theme park music soundtracks, there are
Mhm.
so many songs and music that never make it to albums, and it all has to do with licensing and royalties. All that, and
Mhm.
I'm like, uh, if only we could have this soundtrack. I'm not the only Disney fan, but yeah.
Any other features or playlists or whatnot that you or soundtracks you want to shout out from the Nintendo Music app?
After my big rant.
Yeah, yeah.
I I'm glad that Mario Wonder has made it on again. I haven't checked for like a couple days or so the last time I listened to stuff. Because I just finished Mario Wonder and I was thinking about it. I'm like, I hope this goes on the music app because I did enjoy the music a lot. So that's already on there. I know I said it for the games list that we did in the open, but Smash Brothers. I mean, any of the Smash Brothers soundtracks. Those are some fun
That's got to be
songs.
another one where the rights are probably tied up in a million different
Yeah.
ways.
Yep. There was something that came across as you were saying some stuff, and oh, I think any of the classic Mario ones, like Mario games, has very iconic music that will just randomly pop into my mind. I know the one I was thinking of though. It's Mario related. Yoshi's Story. I want the Yoshi Story
Oh
soundtrack.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
I bet we
one.
get that someday.
That one I had to do some way of getting it on my computer. The song and it's my ringtone. The opening song. That's how much I love that song. So.
I will also shout out that they are definitely feel like they're investing into this because they have
Mhm.
countless different playlist options. So, you can click through and pick your soundtrack that you want to listen to, or you can pick, these curated lists, these curated playlists
Mhm.
of top Nintendo tracks, top Nintendo Switch tracks, stuff to run to, stuff, a good night playlist, a break time playlist. There's so many different options for how to interact with the music on here that it almost makes it feel like there's more music than you think. But it's probably more about like let's have a good base, and as we add music, we will filter it into all these different little playlists so that you can experience and hear new things that are inspired by other soundtracks you like and things like that, like a Spotify type music app.
Well, I just
Pretty
realized
exciting.
something. Oh, sorry.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Oh, I just realized something as you were saying that. I have noticed a playlist, but not that extensively because I just go to games and listen to a
Mhm.
game straight through. But Alarmo. I bet this came out also because of Alarmo, and it's gonna sync up with that somehow.
I would
That's
think
my
so
bet.
too.
Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't follow
That was
Nintendo breaking news,
the other
Alarmo is
announcement that we weren't
is a
enthused about.
hundred is $100 bedside alarm clock of the classic variety that has Nintendo characters and animations and things like that. It looks really cool. There's no way I'm ever
It
buying
does,
one, but
but
it's
it's
very
yeah,
cute.
but it's well, here's the thing, and it there were some things that I'm like, well, I'm kind of interested in this, and then I read something where they're like, they haven't made it to work well if you have more than one person in bed with you, or like more than one moving something in
Oh,
bed. So
right.
it's like
Yeah,
when
because there's
people
like
sleep in their
motion sensors
beds.
on it.
Yes, but it's even like if your pet sleeps in the bed with you, it will get thrown off. And I'm like, wait, so would I don't so this is for I'm like so this alarm clock is basically for teenage gamers or the still single adult gamers. Like I don't I you know, I don't think I'm too far off in saying that. It's like
I cannot imagine a single teenager that really needs a bedside alarm clock in this day and age.
oh, I know.
But
And that's
you
the
never
thing.
know.
Yeah. That's why I said gamer,
Right,
specifically
right.
gamer. But yeah, so I'm with you. It looks spiffy, but I was a little bit like, that's okay.
Yeah.
So
It's very much who is this for? I
yes,
like it, but it's not for anyone. It just
I
exists.
don't.
There's
Yeah,
like five people that needed this.
but I that's what makes me wonder. Like when you're saying it, if the music app is gonna, if there's some way of syncing with it, because then you're gonna get more and more of this. The home automation devices, the smart devices. I could not think of the word. The smart home devices. That's what they're called. You get the Nintendo version basically because it is. I think it's voice activated too, or like there's some voice activation component to Larmo. But that's where I wonder just in ways if it's like okay now we're putting the music app on here. You do have to have the subscription, but then you can curate your own playlists and so you have a wake up playlist, maybe you have a get ready to go playlist, stuff like that, and it's like all right, I can see the reasons for Alarmo and the music app and things like that with it. It's like, all right, gotcha. I still won't buy one, but
It
yeah.
does kind of imply that we might be only a few short years away from having Mario as our home assistant, our digital home assistant, and be like,
If
hey Mario, set the mood lights. Yaha!
yeah, yeah, Mario, lock all the doors. Let's go. Like
No, let's a stay, Mario. Let's a
that's
stay.
that too. But I'd actually be okay with like a Nintendo Smart Home automation stuff. I would, but yeah,
That would be goofy fun. All right, let's head on to our game of the month, Majora's Mask.
which is
Uh,
not on the music app either.
It is not. Ocarina of
It is
Time
not.
is.
Yeah.
There's really only like, except for the Switch, I think the Switch has like 9 titles, and then there's like 2 or 3 from most other
Hmm.
major Nintendo
For now.
consoles at this point. Yeah. I am hoping we're around 100 titles by the time a year has gone by. Um, but let's talk about Majora's Mask. And just as a recap from last time, so Ocarina of Time is over 25 years old, and Majora's Mask came out just under 2 years after Ocarina
Wow.
of Time.
Okay.
One little interesting tidbit I noticed is the North American and the often back in the this era, games would release in Japan first, and then 6 months to a year later would come out in the U.S. after they'd been translated and localized. Um, Ocarina of Time came out nearly at the same time, like within days of each other in Japan and North America. But Majora's Mask came out like 6 months earlier in Japan than it came out in North America. What does that mean? I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. But is they were very close together, less than 2 years apart at the widest measuring of time that you could do. And I found it interesting. So this is a game that really innovates on the Zelda formula in many ways. Some of which are very successful and have been kind of carried over into other games, and some of which never were featured again in future Zelda titles. There's a lot less tools, like the classic hook shot and boomerang and all those. There's less of those in Majora's Mask, and there's less dungeons. Um, I think Ocarina of Time had about 10 dungeons, and Majora's Mask only has 4. There's still like it's not a smaller game. There's just more overworld, non-dungeon interactions and puzzles and mysteries to solve in Majora's Mask than there was in Ocarina of Time. So they went a really different direction with this game. Any other highlights you want to talk about just describing the game before we get on to presentation?
Well, I was thinking that as you were saying the dungeons, it has a time component in a lot of
Hmm.
places. A little bit more that than the dungeon is.
Hmm.
I'm not thinking of words well today, as you can tell. So I'm trying to think of the word, not time limit, like
Yeah, yeah,
a
like a clock.
timer, a timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That
Um, Go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh no, that's mostly it. It's just there's that kind of component more than the dungeons. It feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more as we go along, but there's a 3 in-game days timer before the moon falls and destroys the world. We'll get more onto that, but also there's not a lot more to explain than that. Why is the moon falling? It's because, and why is it happening in 3 days? I don't know. It just is, you know. Just
Yeah.
suspend
Why
those
not?
disbeliefs. You got 3 days. Save the world, Zelda. Or excuse me, Zelda ain't here. Link. And so that was definitely a big part of this game that is unique. I don't know any other Zelda title that has, a timer like that going in it.
I
Um,
yeah. Um not for like a big portion of the game. I think that there are some in different places, but this was like a major aspect of the game was
yeah,
having this timer. Yeah.
Yeah, like things like you will have specific time periods in this 3-day time span. On the second day around these hours, you'll have a character running around that you can go and help and do a puzzle, but isn't available at other times. And you'll have to rewind time using that Ocarina of Time mechanic to otherwise you'll run out of time and the game will end. So you're constantly turning back the clock to try to get more time. It's pretty unique. But
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about presentation specifically before we get into the gameplay mechanics of that time rewind thing. How'd you
Sure.
like the look of Majora's Mask?
I know we had some problems with the presentation with Ocarina of Time. I remember you talking about some of the background for the overworld for that and other things. I feel like they actually polished up a lot of the look in this one. It seemed like things were a little bit smoother. I do know, like when you go to select the game in the menu, that it gives you like what the box art was, and it had something about the expansion pack that
Mhm.
existed for the N64, which is the thing that helped graphics. So I
Yes.
do wonder if that helped it enough to make it a little bit smoother, a little bit better looking. And then
Yeah,
I did notice there's more to the backgrounds, a little bit more, not a lot, but just a little bit more to them.
I I did a not a deep dive into the expansion pack after noticing that, but a little wade into the expansion pack for the N64. So this was a physical add-on component that you would plug into your console permanently. It would just be
Mm-hmm.
it would like you're adding a stick of RAM to your computer, and it doubled the amount of RAM the N64 had to 8 MB. So presumably from 4 MB to 8 MB. And Majora's Mask was one of only 3 games that actually required the expansion pack that were released, at
Oh,
least.
yeah.
It was Perfect Dark, Donkey Kong 64, and Majora's Mask.
Okay.
Many other games got enhanced by the expansion pack, but none of them
Mm-hmm.
required it like these three. And effectively, those games had better resolutions and better frame rates. Um, Specifically, they mentioned this was per the NintendoFandom.com wiki that for Majora's Mask, it was used to enhance graphics, such as increased texture details, removal of fog, and increase the number of on screen models as well as effects.
Okay.
So I completely agree that the visual limits of Ocarina of Time were largely fixed. I didn't have a lot of complaints about how Majora's Mask looked visually.
Mm-hmm.
It was a brighter color palette. Textures were less noticeably repetitive, and it was just enjoyable. They also shrunk the areas, as it were, so there would be more loading screens that you would pass through as you move from area to area. However, those
Oh,
areas
okay.
were much more visually interesting, so it seemed like
Mm-hmm.
they made a smarter use of the limited hardware, plus the expansion packs improvements to the N64 hardware. Um, Definitely dated still, 2 decades old, but I had no complaints to the presentation or the visuals. I think they were very suitable and interesting, and as usual, for a Legend of Zelda game, the soundtrack was exceptional. Any other highlights before we go to gameplay?
Yep.
So gameplay wise, Majora's Mask, again, kind of comparing it to Ocarina of Time, it felt a little bit better to me. Not a lot, like maybe 5% better. We still have the targeting is new in
Mm-hmm.
gaming. Moving through 3D spaces is new. The N64 controller was very awkward, so you didn't have the ability to do as much as you would with like a dual stick, dual analog stick controls that would come out just a handful of years after this and be popularized a little bit after this game came out. And but it did feel a little bit better. So I don't know if it was so much that they made changes or that I just got used to it having just played Ocarina of Time. Did you find you were fighting with controls the same way as Ocarina of Time, or how'd you feel?
No, I felt like they were improved somehow, and I couldn't like pinpoint exactly how because I didn't know if it was me just getting used to the controls or if they really did improve them, but it did feel a lot better. A little bit easier to get around, a little bit easier to focus in on things. Um, Overall, I felt like it was very improved. Yeah,
Um,
a
Also
little bit.
noticeable, you have a fairy companion, just like Navi from Ocarina of Time. Now you have Tattle, and Tattle, rather than yelling at you to listen to her, will simply have a little bell sound to indicate, "Hey, I've got some info if you want to press the button for it," which was a very a big improvement over how they had that system work. It works exactly the same way as Ocarina of Time, but just that little sound effect change really made a positive difference to the game.
The information was still annoying at times, though, too.
Right, but it felt less like you must look at this same text, the same sentence of information over and over again, and more like,
Yes.
hey, did you forget? Here it is again.
Yeah.
Um, So the one thing I really wanted to talk a bit about is, well, A, how far did you make it in this game?
Probably.
Did you
Yeah.
did you get to the first dungeon?
No, not the first dungeon. I will admit not, because I it did take me a while to figure some things out, and so
Mhm.
I did make it far enough to get past some of the basics, but not much more than that. Yeah.
Did you make it outside the city or through the
Hmm.
first, 3-day time period?
I made it outside. I made it to the witch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Yeah, yeah.
So there was still probably another. From that point, I did make it through the first dungeon, but that was really sheer determination on my part
Oh,
of like I'm just gonna beeline the first dungeon. Okay, there's so much in between me and the first dungeon. I will just keep going, and you probably still had another hour and a half before the first dungeon from the
oh
witch's
wow.
hut.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is. I found it very interesting. To me, a Zelda game is more about the dungeons and the tools and the puzzles, and Majora's Mask seemed much more interested in exploring the open world concept
Hmm.
of let's talk to people, let's help them with their problems, let's get you still got pieces of heart that you can go find and little puzzles throughout to do that, but it seemed much more interested in building a cohesive world than building these complex, interesting dungeons. Again, going from 10 dungeons in Ocarina of Time down to 4 in Majora's Mask. Um, how did you feel about the gameplay since you didn't even make it through a dungeon? Did you enjoy the time you spent exploring the world and working your way slowly toward the dungeon in the swamp?
I did. I enjoyed it more than Ocarina of Time, which, or maybe differently, there was some frustrating things with it that it took me a bit of time to figure out. I think the like timers in games I hate, so I didn't like the whole like I've got to do this stuff before the third day because I don't know what's going to happen kind of thing. So I didn't necessarily like that, but I enjoyed it. Like there was something about it that I enjoyed a little bit more than Ocarina of Time, but again, I can't quite pinpoint why. I got a little tired of okay, and especially like getting to the witch part and trying to figure out what to do. Like it just was like, okay, can you just get me to a boss of some kind? Like,
Hmm.
so I was feeling that a bit, and it drags on and on. But I think because like you're saying, like it's being used to Zelda games where it's more of gearing up as you go through a dungeon to get to the boss and defeat the boss and move on to the next dungeon part. So this was different. This was much more um, investigative and in exploring the overworld, like you said. And yeah, that is just really different. So I don't
I
know.
will say we were having a conversation earlier. We were planning our next game, and Chris was like, do we want to play another RPG? I was like, well, Zelda is an RPG, but Majora's Mask kind of is more of an RPG in the way that you need to go
They
talk to
were,
the people in the village,
yeah,
learn their problems, use those as hints to like tell you what to do next. That's something that I mean is always a small part of a Zelda game, but is really frequent in the classic RPG franchise, and was a big part of Majora's Mask, more
Hmm.
so than really any other Zelda game that I've played. It's interesting. Again, they did a lot of things different in Majora's Mask, which I
Yeah.
can appreciate for that novelty, and and some very innovative things like that clock. The 3-day timer is incredibly innovative, even though I also kind of didn't like it. But I can't argue that it was different in a interesting way. Um, One of my big complaints is not only how long it took me to get to the first dungeon, but the puzzle design. There's still like in a dungeon where there's lots of you got to figure out how to get through all the rooms and get all the things and then face the boss. Um, just navigating the world was a puzzle at times, and at least in the
Hmm.
first region, the swampland outside of the city, the puzzle design seemed to all be themed around um, moving in challenging ways. So you would either be gliding in your Deku mask form, or you'd be walking on like narrow pathways in your Link form. And if you fell off, the challenge was just navigating these places. And if you fell off, you would basically be sent back to start. And I just like, this feels like I'm trying to play Super Monkey Ball, except I'm not playing Super Monkey Ball. I'm playing Zelda, and I wanted to play Zelda. And there were so many times that I just got, sent back to start. Just shortly after the witch's hut, there's this stealth section, kind of like in Ocarina of Time, where you had to
Mm,
get past the guards
the
to see
guards.
Zelda.
Hmm.
You had to navigate this Deku creature palace where the guards were, if they spotted you, would throw you out of the castle. And of course, the guards at the front of the castle would let you right back in and just chastise you so you could try again. But it just became such a chore to be like, okay, I can't see that well. I can't control the camera that well, but you're asking me to avoid being caught by all of these fast moving Deku people. And okay, let's do that. And then the next part was I had to use my flying power, where your Deku Mask Link could sink into the flowers and then launch
Yeah.
themselves out and twirl around. And you had to do that, but you did it above the security guard area. So if you missed a jump, you fell into the security guard
Oh, and you
area,
had to.
got caught, got sent back to start. And I spent probably 2 hours trying to navigate the Deku Palace portion before I could get to the first dungeon. And it was just trial and error over and over
Hmm.
again. And I literally got so bored, I put on a podcast while I tried over and over again, just because it was a chore. It was not, so much of the design of this game and like, this is really interesting, but did you think it was fun? Because it wasn't that fun to play through. But that's me 20 years later thinking about it, not me 20 years ago when this was brand new, and
Hmm.
people loved it. Majora's Mask is
Well,
beloved by many people.
yeah. But I think we would have been frustrated with it back then too, because we were frustrated with other games sometimes for not quite. I mean, Mario Party for sure. If there were little things that like you just moved it slightly and it would make you fall off of something in Mario Party, a platform, we were so mad because it just was not fair in the game, kind of thing. So I don't think we would have been that much more patient with it 20 years ago. Yeah.
I could see a world where, I'm back in high school, the game just came out, I have more time on my hands. I've got my Prima player's guide for Majora's Mask sitting in front of me and just going through this game with the guide and having fun. Like I could see that being a thing. However, that's not what 2024 is now.
Hmm.
And, you know, I don't think it aged well, definitely. It's possible I would have liked it in the past, but I didn't really now. Um, one other thing I want to note in the saga of trying to do something, failing, and getting sent back. Uh, you may not have noticed by where you were in the game, but when the timer runs out, when you have to just play the song to go back to day one on the 3-day timer, you
Hmm.
lose all of your money. You lose any consumable items you have. So if you've got the bow and arrow, then you keep the bow and arrow, but you lose all your arrows. If you have a potion bottle, you keep your potion bottle, but you lose whatever was inside of it.
I'm guessing
Um,
like Deku sticks and seeds and stuff like that
yes,
too.
sticks and seeds are
Wow.
gone. All of that is gone. Apparently, somewhere in the city, there's a bank where you can store your money before you rewind time and then pull it
Oh,
back out.
okay.
I don't know how that's supposed to work in this world, but I guess that's a convenience that I never happened to discover in
Right,
my
because that,
six-ish
yeah,
hours with
it
this
doesn't make
game.
sense.
I didn't turn over enough rocks to find that particular building, I guess. Um, and oh, and also if you run out of time, like the first time I was in this Deku Palace where I was having so much trouble, and I ran out of time, so I played the song to go back in time, and it teleports me back to the city, which means I need to run across all that swampland to get back to the Deku Palace, which required me also helping the witches again. And
Oh,
doing something a second time is certainly faster, but it doesn't. It resets just about everything in the world, other than some of the items and songs you've
yeah.
unlocked. And
Wow.
I did not really enjoy that.
I don't
Uh,
know quite why they did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't to say this game is universally a chore. I did enjoy the first dungeon fairly well. There was some really interesting, there was like a mini boss combat where I had to put on my Deku mask, which would transform Link into this Deku creature,
Deku
this
kid.
kind of like a plant-like creature, and it's a little strange, but it
Yeah.
it was one of your tools. The masks were kind of like your tools, and then I'd have my bow and arrow, which I got in the dungeon, and my sword, of course, and so I'd be swapping in between all of these things uh, to battle this creature, and then it jumped on a turtle back, and I had to turn into the Deku to knock it off of the turtle. Then I had to switch back to Link and pull out the bow to shoot him off the ceiling, and like that was really interesting and like classic Zelda. Make good use of your resources and you will succeed. Gameplay. So it was still there, and I kind of wonder if some of the other regions that weren't the swamp would have had more enjoyable puzzles to me,
Mm.
because it's sort of like the Deku mask is what the swamp was based on, and then eventually you'd get one that turns you into one of the Goron, the rock creatures, and that would
Hmm.
be important for a different region of the game. So I didn't make it that far to experience those myself, but I kind of hope that would have been more fun than the swampland. Anything else on gameplay, or shall we move on to the story?
We can move on. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the story. How'd you enjoy the Majora's Mask story, which you experienced a lot of because it's pretty front loaded?
Yeah, I actually did enjoy it. It was a very interesting story. Because like from the beginning, I was really wondering what what it all meant for the world because it takes it taking place right after Ocarina of Time. It's obvious that you weren't going to be fighting Ganon or Ganondorf,
Hmm.
and but you still had something happening that was not good, and I really like their take on it to have this Skull Kid kind of creature thing like be kind of corrupted with the mask. And
Hmm.
I know slightly spoiler, but like you said, it's a lot more front loaded
Yeah.
than you'd think. And so I like this take on it that it's just this kind of mischievous kid, and the more layers you peel back, the more it gets interesting. And even to expand who this character is, and even, I mean, not just him, there's like a few other kind of characters in play of um that seems sinister. So I like that. I liked having layers peeled back, and it just was an intriguing story to me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely is a very sinister nature to Majora's Mask all over the place. There's the mask salesman who,
Mm-hmm.
originally owned Majora's Mask, that has now corrupted the Skull Kid. Um, and he seems like, go get the mask for me or horrible things will happen. And you're like, why do you have it then?
Yeah.
what, what sort of evil things are you going to do once you get the mask?
Yep.
Okay, whatever. That's the game. And then the moon itself has a face on it, and it is
Yes.
literally
Angry.
looming down at you wherever you are in the game. You can look up and see this angry face slowly getting bigger as it comes towards you,
Hmm.
and it's a definitely this foreboding story. Um, I found, Ocarina of Time plays this really pivotal part, very confusing part, but pivotal part
Hmm.
in the overall Legend of Zelda storyline. Majora's Mask feels like a very surreal, dreamlike side story that I don't think
Hmm.
has any overall importance outside of the
I
game.
don't think so either.
But
Yeah.
it is very like, let's play with concepts and ideas and colors rather than tell a kind of traditional good versus evil story with people vying for power, like a more human story that you can connect to. Let's play in the dream world for a little while. And it I guess eventually, another slight spoiler for a more than 20-year-old game, when you get to the dungeons, it's four temples and you have to cleanse them, kind of like you had to cleanse the Deku Tree in Ocarina of Time. And then it releases these guardians who are these colossal giant creatures that could actually stand up and touch the moon from the Earth or whatever planet you're on. And
Oh.
it's like these very interesting creatures that you eventually have to recruit to help you. They're also supposed to be friends of Skull Kid, is kind of how they're pitched. Like you have to go get Skull Kid's four friends to stop him. And then I know that the ending of the game, I did not even come close to getting there, involves you going to the moon. So it's a very
That was my guess.
cerebral, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
very kind of out there
Yeah.
storyline compared to Ocarina of Time. Even with the time travel of Ocarina of Time, this is the weird one. Um, it's like, you need a story to provide a framework for the game. It did a great job at it. I wasn't particularly invested because of how abstract it was at times, but it wasn't a bad story by any means. It served its purpose, and then it kind of got out of the way and let you explore the
Hmm.
world. So any final thoughts about excuse me, not no final thoughts about
Okay.
Ocarina of Time. You had
No,
your
we're done.
chance. No more. Do you have any final thoughts on Majora's Mask before we rate it?
No, we can move on to rating. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last thought is kind of the same with Ocarina of Time. I didn't hate my time with this game. I was just frustrated and kind of left wondering, why did you make these choices in terms of gameplay? Um, I kind of suspect I would have enjoyed it back in the day, but it just wasn't the game for me in 2024. So I was really torn between zero thumbs up and one thumb up. It's like I respect this game for trying a lot of new things, and it did improve a good amount over Ocarina of Time, but it also forgot some of the lessons of The Legend of Zelda in general, for interesting puzzle design. So I'm kind of gonna cheat and just give it a half a thumb up, because
Ooh. Wow.
I don't think it quite earned the full one thumb up. How
Wow.
about you?
I would give it one thumb up. I know. I know we were mentioning a little earlier, or like in the messaging, and you were saying a little bit of that. I played a little bit before we recorded today, and it made me realize, yeah, the frustrations aren't quite enough. I enjoyed it a lot. Somehow a lot more than Ocarina of Time, and that always had a very fond memory in my mind of playing originally. But this one I had more fun, and I liked the difference in gameplay and aspects from other Zelda games. But yeah, there was a little bit of frustration. And a lot of it was because you had to explore so much, and it wasn't quite um, uh, not linear. What am I? What am I? There we go. Words again. Words are not working. It wasn't obvious to, I guess, I was looking for, I think, a different word than obvious, but things weren't as obvious to try to find for
Right.
me.
What am I supposed to do next? There's such a long
Yeah.
chain of events in between the start of the game and the first dungeon that it is you do get lost a lot.
Hmm. So I don't think that's a great feature of it at all. I
Hmm.
mean, especially when you have a timer. If it were about the timer, that's fine. If it were about Actually, yeah, now that I'm saying all that, if it were about the timer, there's ways that you could do the game because then it's like you have to keep repeating back because you're almost trying to perfect all your steps. And there are games like that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
cool, that would be fun. If it were about the exploration and there's many different paths, that would be cool because just the exploration part. You could get lost, but if you can figure out the right way, then that's fine. But having both of them in, it made it much more anxious than it should be. I think so. I
How
don't
about
like that.
how
Yeah.
about do you think this game is worth playing for anyone today with the online pass? And do you think it aged well? Is it still fun? Do you think it's worth playing?
This is a little tricky for me because of we didn't play it back in the day. And so
Mhm.
if for somebody else, and I mean I guess a lot of like younger folk, them youngins, they didn't necessarily play it. This is a brand new game. Um
I think this is separate because we'll talk about the nostalgia factor in just a second, but um,
yeah,
I,
but
like,
just
is
for
this a game you'd recommend to somebody today with the online pass?
well no, but that's the thing is that's why I'm going through all that. I am a little torn. It's hard for me to say because this was brand new for us
Hmm.
and we're playing modern games and there's plenty of others who are playing even the modern Zeldas. Um, and so I would, I think I would actually say if they had the online pass, go through and play it at least a little bit because there's some history to it. I mean, it helped me because in the newer Smashes, some of the items are actually from Majora's Mask and much more than
Oh,
I thought were there, and that actually helped me build a lot more history with that game too because I played through Majora's Mask. So I think for those reasons, I'd actually say, yeah, I'd recommend it at least a
okay.
little bit. Yeah.
I I am going to be more cautious in that I am not going to say that Majora's Mask is worth playing
Okay.
today, as it were. Certainly has its place in history. Of the two games, I think Ocarina of Time is a slightly
Mm-hmm.
better game in some regards, and also holds a more elevated position in video game history than Majora's
Mm-hmm.
Mask. And so I think that if I don't know if I would heartily recommend either game, but of the two, I would say Ocarina of Time is plenty, and therefore wouldn't recommend Majora's Mask to somebody that isn't coming to it from a nostalgia perspective, at least.
Okay.
Um, Now, the nostalgia factor is going to be tricky on this one because we didn't play it growing up.
Yeah.
You know, maybe like 10-minute demo or something like that, but really not playing it. I know lots of people out there still love this game. It's still on countless, best Nintendo games, best N64 games, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
on best games of all time lists. Um, I I kind of wonder if the people that put it on best game of all time have played it recently, but you know, very well. That's their judgment, their list. Um, I think we do not give it the nostalgia factor just because we didn't play it and we don't know that for a fact, and we both had frustrations. But what do you think?
Well, I'd say it. I think we'd have to lower the level so like whatever out of what do we usually have out of six?
Just 1 point, yeah, out of six
Yeah. So out
points.
of
So
five
this
this
is
time.
one of the 6 points.
Yeah. Well, but we can't actually rate it. We
Okay.
can't actually give it a point or not. So
In the
it's like
past, what
a
we've done
and
is given it a half point, half of the points
okay.
because we suspect it has a
I guess we
nostalgia
did do
factor.
Harvest Moon. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm comfortable giving it the half point there.
Okay.
Just because I can't say for sure, if somebody coming back to this game after 20 years would be like, oh, it's just like I remember it. I'm so happy I'm playing it.
Hmm.
Despite its flaws, I'm still enjoying it a lot. And I think that's a fair guess on our weird rating scheme. So that gives, let's see, 2.5 points out of 6 to Majora's Mask, and just 1 point lower than Ocarina of Time, which I think got a 3.5. Let's
Interesting.
see.
Yeah.
Yes, that is what we did. So, 2.5 points out of 6 for Majora's Mask. And up next, we have another episode of the Chrono Trigger Recap Pod where we are in antiquity and kind of scratching our heads a little
Totally.
more than we have in the past.
Yeah.
Uh, we're getting close to the end. This is kind of the last
Yeah.
big area of Chrono Trigger before we get to the end game. So we're making good progress.
Depending on how many side
I thought
quests we
we'd be
do.
stuck in this recap pod for like the rest of our lives, but we're over halfway. Um, and after that, our next Nintendo Online Expansion Pass episode will be Star Fox 64. The N64 Star Fox, if that wasn't clear enough. A game that both of us fondly played many, many times.
Hmm.
Because it's a shorter game, I think I have beaten Star Fox 64 more times than Chrono Trigger. But again, it's a much shorter game, action game
And it
than.
had at least two endings you could get, I think.
Oh yeah,
At
gosh, I'm gonna
least.
have to do some research into those because I don't remember them at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So that's what's coming up next. You can send questions to twobrothersplaygame@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and YouTube at twobrothersPAG. Chris does live streams on YouTube's and has some other gaming content as well there, as well as Chris. Shout out your other channel for Disney stuff because that's pretty fun and a little different
Oh,
for
well,
anyone that
thank you.
enjoys.
Yeah, I think think I've even said on this podcast I am a bit of an art historian, and as you can tell from like I said before, big Disney theme park fan and theme park fan in general. So it is theme parts, PARTS, not parks, but parts. So theme parts on YouTube, and I do some research into different art pieces that are within theme parks that you wouldn't know necessarily are old kind of relics, I guess, and or pointing to old relics and things like that. So I try to do that, and then just some theme park videos, ride throughs, whatnot. So
Very
theme
fun.
parts, yeah.
I have always said it to myself, theme P arts because it's art
That,
themed.
yeah, because I emphasize the A in the arts for the logo.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you're right. So yeah, I know it's hard to do. It's like it's almost a symbol, but it's not. So you can go like arts if you really
Yeah,
want to. Yeah,
just stumble your way through it and that's the right one.
yeah.
All right. So, in what may very well be my most shoehorned in segue yet, I really like all of the mood-based playlists in the Nintendo Music app, but it did make me wonder, what if there were terrain-based playlists featured in the music? So you get music from like grassy plains and mysterious forests and dark caves. What sort of terrain-based music playlist would you like to see in the Nintendo Music app?
I'm coughing because I'm laughing so much. Mountains are nice.
This is life.